Welcome! In today's video we march from a crash. I'm going to be painting an Ultramarine and show you my take on it. I hope you'll follow along at home and let's get started.
Hi guys, just a quick note before I begin painting this miniature. The miniature I'm painting in this video has been built using parts from the Ultramarines Primaris upgrades. The very first thing I would like to paint on this model is of course the biggest feature, the power armor, which we are going for a very blue tone, because it's an Ultramarine, you know. And I'm using some cracked blue for a base coat, and I've already mixed it on my palette, roughly 1:1 with water. Now, before I begin, I would like to tell you that I'm going to avoid the helmet, which I'm going to paint red later, and his right knee panel, and this back panel here, which I'm going to be painting white later on. But other than that, I'm going to paint the entire power armor with Macrax blue to begin with. So, grab some paint on your brush, and just plug it all in. If you don't feel like the paint is covering good enough, just let it dry completely and then add a second layer. The Macrack glue is dry, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Next I'm going to add a shade to give it some definition, and I'm using Dragonhof Nightshade for this. So I'm adding this all over the blue areas. And once you're done, give it at least 20 minutes to dry. I have given the shade plenty of time to dry, and now we have some nice definition in all the recesses. However, this marine is way too dark for an Ultramarine. So next we're going to add a layer, and for this I'm using Eldorf Guard Blue. And I thinned it down quite a bit. I think I've used 2 drops of paint to 4 drops of water. And then using the same brush, I'm painting it all over, but avoiding the recesses where the shade has settled. And if it's too thin, just let it dry and add another coat. This will brighten it up like we want. I ended up giving it 2 coats to make it cover fully. I could have added less water to make it cover in 1 coat, but I just wanted it to go on smoothly. Next I'm going to add a highlight of Calgar Blue, and I've mixed this roughly 1:1 with water. And this is for all the sharp edges and plates and panels and everything, so this might take a while, but you can do as little or as much of this as you want. And wherever possible, use the side of your brush to add a highlight, for example right here. We have much better control that way. Like so. And just go around the model and highlight at least all the sharp edges and raised areas, but also pick out all those plates like I said before. And with that highlight applied, we are ready to add our second and final highlight. And I'll be using some dry paint for this, Ethereum Blue. I'll give it a light dry brush all over. So I'm grabbing a little paint on my brush here, my dry brush, and wipe most of it off on the tissue. And then just flicker it all over the power armor. Just like so. And with that, the highlighting stage is complete. Next, I would like to add a glaze all over it to bring the colors more together. And I'm using a blue glaze from True Thin Coat's paint range. This is completely optional, as I realize that not every one of you own this particular paint. But I just think it will, like I said, bring the colors more together and yeah, make it look great. And it is very thin, but I'll still add a little bit of water to this. So just apply this all over the blue power armor. It will tone down the highlights a bit and make it seem more cohesive. And when it's dry, we are ready to move on to the next step. And with that, the blue power armor is complete. Next, I would like to paint his helmet, and I'm going to paint it red, starting with a base coat of Mephiston Red. I've thinned it down roughly 1:1 with water. Just be careful not to hit the blue areas, of course. With the base coat dry, I'll next add a shade of Carroburg Crimson. And once you've applied this, give it at least 20 minutes to dry. Next, I'm going to brighten it back up with a layer of Evil Sun Scarlet. Apply this all over, but avoid all the recesses. Following that, I'll add the first highlight with the Wild Rider Red. And just like before, whenever possible, use the side of your brush for much better control. like so. For our final highlight, I'll use the same principle as we did for the blue power armor and add a dry brush, this time with Kindle Flame. I just flicker it lightly across the top of the helmet. Following that highlight, I'll finish it off with adding a glaze from 2 thin coats, just called red glaze. I thinned it down a bit with some water. Just apply this all over and let it dry completely, and the helmet is complete. We will be painting the eye lenses later in this video. While the red glaze is still drying, I'll add some non-oil to the white parts of the power armor, which in this case is the knee right here and the one on his back. And remember to let it dry fully before heading on to the next stage. With the non-oil dry, I'll then add a thin down layer of Ultramarine grey. Just avoid the recesses. Lastly, I'll finish off the white by adding a highlight of white scar. And once more, whenever you can, use the side of your brush for better control. And then the power armor is complete. I've also picked out this Ultramarine symbol on his helmet with some white scar. Next I'm going to paint all the steel on this model, and I'm using a base coat of lead belcher. And this is stuff such as his scanner here, and the end of his scabbard, and also all these vents on the back. So just block them all in with the lead belcher, and we are ready to move on to the next step. When the lead belcher is dry, I'm then adding a shade of non-oil to the same areas. And when you're done with it, give it plenty of time to dry before we move on to the next step. When the shade is dry, we have some really nice definition all around the steel areas. Next I'm going to add a layer of iron breaker, which essentially just means I'm going all over the steel again, but avoiding all the recesses where the shade has settled. So just apply this all over the steel to brighten it back up. And with that iron breaker applied, I'm then going to finish it off by adding a highlight of Runefang steel. And whenever possible, use the side of your brush for much better control. Such as right here, for example. Like so. Nice and shiny. With the steel complete, I would like to move on to the black details. And for this I'm using a base coat of Corvus Black. The reason I'm not using a deeper black like Abaddon Black is because I want to shade it afterwards. So just pick out all the areas you want to be black. And for me it's going to be this belt here. And his fingers, glove, whatever. And all the joints. And right here. And yeah, essentially anything you want to be black. Cover it in a base coat of Corvus Black. With the Corvus Black applied, we're then going to add a shade like I mentioned before. And I'm using null oil for this, and I'm using a fairly small size brush because I want to avoid the areas we've already painted. So, just carefully shade down the Corvus Black. When the shade is dry, I'm next going to add a layer of Stormwomen fur. I thinned it down roughly to 2 drops of paint to 3 drops of water. So, just apply this all over the black areas and avoid all the recesses. And finally I'm going to finish off the black by adding a highlight of Karak stone. Just in the most raised and sharp areas. And once again, use the side of your brush if you can. Like so. Next I would like to move on to all the golden details, and the biggest feature is of course this symbol on his chest, but also his trim on his shoulder pads, and I'm also painting this Ultramarine symbol on his power sword in gold. And yeah, whatever bits and pieces you would like to paint gold, do it now. And as I said, I'm using Retributor armor, which I have thinned down with water. With that base coat applied, I'm next adding a shade of Raglan Flesh Shade to add some much needed definition. With that shade applied, I'm next adding a layer of Liberator Gold. I've thinned it down with water, roughly 1:1. So just apply this all over and avoid the recesses. And finally, I would like to finish off the gold by adding a highlight of Stormhold Silver. And as always, whenever possible, use the side of your brush for better control. Such as right here, for example. Next up is all the leather, and well, I say all the leather. On this model there really only is this scabbard. But on your particular Space Marine there might be a pistol holster and ammo bags, pouches, etc. So what I'm going to do here is make it look old, worn and well, used. And for that I'm going to use 4 paints and no shades. And the first step is quite simple. I'm going to base coat it with Rhinox hide, which I've thinned down with water. Just be careful not to hit the areas we've already painted. And next up I'm jumping directly from a base coat to an edge highlight using Scrag Brown, which is also thinned down with water. And as always, use the side of your brush. And next up I'm going to add a little stippling, still using my Scrag Brown. And I'm applying this where I just added the edge highlight. So just gently dab it around the areas where you edge highlighted. This will add a little texture to the miniature. Next I'm adding some very fine lines of Scrag Brown across the leather. Just here and there, in random places. Next up I'll do some stippling again, this time with Ushabti bone, and this is to make it look more extreme, where the wear and tear is worst. So just gently dab it onto the edge highlight from before. You can do as little or as much of this as you want. Like so, for instance. The contrast might look a bit extreme right now, but we will glaze it later to make it all more cohesive. Next I'm taking some Ushabti bone once again and adding a few dots where those intersection lines are, well, most extreme. For example here, here, in the center of each line, for instance. Next up is that glaze I promised you. I've added 1 drop of Rhinox hide to my palette to roughly 4 drops of water, so it's very, very runny. And what I'm going to do here is apply it all over except on the edge highlights. So down the center of this scabbard. And finally, I would like to create some shadow effects. I've taken a drop of Abaddon Black and added to my Rhinox Hide glaze, and added a few drops of water as well. So this is applied everywhere you want a shadow. For example, just beneath this steel here. Like so. And there is also a small recess right here. Like so. So in effect, anywhere you want a shadow. With the leather complete, I can now move on to the parchment, which sits right here. And I'm starting with a base coat of Ushabti bone. Just apply it all over and be careful not to hit the areas we've already painted. The base coat is now dry, so next I'm going to add a shade of Agrax Earthshade, and as you can see, I'm taking it straight from the pot. I've given the shade plenty of time to dry, so now I'm going to brighten it back up by adding a layer of Ushabti bone, thinned down with water. So apply this all over, but avoid the recesses. Like so. And next up I'll add an edge highlight of Screaming Skull, using the side of my brush, and I thin it down with water. And if you want to, you can just leave it right here, but I'm going to add a final step, which is completely optional, and that's to add the impression of some text using thinned down Abaddon Black. Just some scribbles. Just like so. Next up is the display on his scanner or transmitter or whatever it is. I'm just calling it a scanner. I'm starting with a base coat of white scar. I want it to be a really bright white color to begin with. And then let it dry fully before heading on to the next step. While I was waiting for the white scar to dry, I also added 2 dots to these nodes or lights on his arm. And then I painted the pommel of his power sword in gold, shown as before. Next I'm going to use a technical paint, which is Tesseract Glow. And it's very important that you shake this very well before use. And I've already done that, so I'm adding it straight from the pot. So just get some on your brush and add it to this panel or screen or whatever you want to call it. And let it dry fully before heading on to the next stage. And also I'm adding this to one of these nodes here. Only one. I did apply 2 coats of Tesseract Glow. I let the first one dry completely before adding the second one. And next I've taken a tiny amount of Wastaga Red to my palette and thinned it out with water. This is to add 2 or 3 dots on the scanner, which might indicate dangerous enemies nearby. Like so. And I'm also applying it right here. And now it's time for the more interesting part of this miniature, and that's the power sword. I want it to look like it's very energized. So what I'm beginning with is a base coat of Stender scale green, and I have thinned it down heavily with water. I think I've used 1 drop paint to 3 drops of water. And the reason for that is because I want it to be applied very smoothly, so I'd rather apply 2 or 3 thin coats rather than 1 thick one. So, just get some on your brush, and then base coat the entire sword. Let it dry and then apply a second or even a third or fourth layer if you need to. As you can see, it's very thin. It took me 3 coats to cover this smoothly. Next I'm going to add a highlight of, an edge highlight actually, with 1000 Suns Blue. I've also thinned this down with water in a 1:1 ratio. So, using the side of my brush, I'm just going up the sword like this. And also I'm going to paint down this line in the center. Oops. Following that, I'm doing the exact same thing again, but this time with Aramid Blue and with a smaller brush. And I've also thinned this down with water. Always thin down your paints. So once more, do an edge highlight. And if you can, try to paint within the line going down the center of the blade. Like so. Following that, we're going to do the exact same thing a 3rd time, this time with Baharoth Blue. So be as neat and precise as you can and go down the center of the blade with this color. Like so. And also edge highlight it. And for our next highlight, I'm going to use some white scar. I did also highlight the power node. And the white scar is not going all over the sword, it's just for the very end to make it look brighter the nearer the end you get. So maybe to around here. Like so. And also down the center here and the top of the power node. Like so. Now we're done with all the highlights. So next I'm going to add a glaze around the power node to make it look like it's the center of the energy. And by doing that I'm going back to 1000 Suns Blue, and I've used at least twice as much water as I'm using paint here. I want to go on really thinly and just in the area of the power node. Just let it dry, and if you want a stronger effect, add a second or even a third glaze to it. Following that, I'm adding a second glaze of Parchment blue, this time closer to the power node, so within the glaze we just added. Like so. And with those glazes applied, it seems like energy is coming from that power node. You can leave the sword here and call it even, but I'm going to add a little freehand here, some crackling lightning, if you will. So using the same paint, Parchment blue, and thin down roughly 1:1 with water, I'm going to freehand some crackling effects all down the sword, starting from the power node. Just paint some lines here and there, and go crazy if you want to, or do as little as you want to, but it will look good if you decide to do this. And once you're happy with those lines, we will then retrace our steps with Parchment blue. Just gently paint over the lines you've already applied in the previous step. And finally, to finish it off, I'm taking a very small amount of white scar thinned with water and adding a few dots here and there. I'm primarily looking for where the lightning is intersecting. Just to add a little bit of an extra effect here. Following that, the sword is complete. The final part I'm going to show you on this miniature is the eye lenses, and I'm starting with a base coat of Wild Rider Red. Just be very gentle and very careful not to hit the areas we've already painted. Then just plug it all in with Wild Rider Red. Following that Wild Rider Red, I'm then taking some thin down Uriel Yellow, and I'm starting near the nose and going about halfway through the eyelids with this color. Like so. And finally, I'm doing the same thing with the Flaskit's Yellow, although I'm just going a quarter of the way this time. And with that flash gets yellow applied, the eye lenses are complete, and so is this miniature for this video. Of course, I still need to paint the base, and you should do it however you want to make it fit with your army. And I also need to apply some transfers. I don't want to show you how to do that in this video because I already have a dedicated video for that. So check that out if you want to, and thank you for watching.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, one Ultramarine ready for action. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you are following along at home, please upload it to Instagram and tag me at Stender Painting. I would love to see your work. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed this, and happy painting.
We'll be right back.